"You're a disgrace to this hotel," shouted the owner, and the entire hall went silent. Layla, her face burning, just lowered her eyes. No one moved a muscle. No one stood up for her. It was just another humiliation among so many. But something was different that morning. There was a watchful gaze in the crowd. A gaze that saw what no one else could. And that gaze changed everything, because from that moment on, nothing at the Royal Crest would ever be the same again. Subscribe to the channel and discover what happens when destiny decides to return what life once took away. From an early age, Layla had learned to walk lightly, not just with her steps, but with her soul. The Royal Crest Hotel in Miami was a world of glittering luxury, and she was the silent shadow that kept it spotless. While guests passed by dragging expensive suitcases, Layla pushed her cleaning cart, the same one for years, its squeaky wheels reminding her of time itself. No one noticed her, and maybe that was for the best. "Those who clean don't shine," said her night shift co-worker. And, in a way, Layla had accepted that. She was invisible, but at least she was free from the fake smiles that echoed through the marble halls. The manager, Mrs. Collins, had a habit of pretending Layla didn't exist. Her heels clicked sharply as she walked, offering smiles to guests and harsh looks to the staff. "Don't touch the lobby flowers," she warned, as if Layla were a threat to the arrangement. With every disguised scolding, Layla would just lower her head and reply softly, "Yes, ma'am." Same tone, same quiet gesture, the same effort to avoid humiliation. Yet inside her, a small secret pulsed, a piece of her past no one there could ever imagine. Layla had a curious habit. She would hum softly while cleaning the rooms. It wasn't American music, or pop, or anything you'd hear on the radio. It was something old, gentle, and distant, a song in Arabic, learned in childhood. Sometimes, when the hallway was empty, she'd let a few notes escape, as if whispering to her memories. It was her way of not forgetting who she was before everything fell apart. And when the last note faded, she'd smile to herself, fold the sheet, and move on. The hotel was a perfect picture of the inequality she knew too well. The owner, Mr. Harrison, was always surrounded by businessmen and millionaires flashing watches and fake laughter, while the employees barely had time for lunch. To most, Layla was just the cleaning lady. But to her, that job meant survival. The price of starting over in a country where no one knew her story. And maybe that was a blessing. No one could judge what they didn't know. On gala days, when celebrities and politicians crossed the lobby, Layla watched from a distance, silent. She saw sparkling dresses, jewels glinting under crystal lights, and wondered if anyone would ever look at her with the same respect. Not that she longed for luxury, she only wanted dignity. But dignity was rare in places where money spoke louder than any virtue. Still, Layla held on to a different kind of wealth, knowing who she was, even if the world pretended not to see. Once, a guest dropped a gold bracelet in the hallway. Layla found it, quietly cleaned it, and returned it to the front desk. The manager looked at her, surprised. "You could have kept it." She simply replied, "My worth doesn't fit in a pocket, sir." Simple words, but they carried a truth few there could grasp. Layla had a calmness that unsettled the arrogant. There was something in her silence that revealed strength, the kind that comes from knowing pain and learning to walk through it. At night, when the hotel finally went quiet, Layla sat in the storage room with a dim flashlight, reading from old notebooks. Yellowed pages filled with scribbles in English, Arabic, and French, traces of a time when she believed knowledge could open doors. But life had its own plans. She kept those notebooks as if guarding a piece of her soul, the last reminder that she once dreamed of being more than a cleaner. Some co-workers whispered, "She's strange." Others just ignored her. Layla let them. After all, in a world where shine blinds character, being invisible was almost a blessing. But sometimes, loneliness weighed heavy, like the smell of disinfectant stuck to her hands, or the distant laughter she never shared. Even so, when the sun rose and the clock struck 6, there she was, ready, in her spotless blue uniform, badge straight, and the same practiced smile. And it was on one of those seemingly ordinary mornings that fate began to move its pieces. There was a different buzz in the halls, a tension you could feel. The Royal Crest was expecting an international delegation, and among them, a powerful man. An Arab millionaire, whose investments made Mr. Harrison's eyes gleam. Everything had to be perfect. And of course, Layla would be the last one remembered, but the first to be blamed if anything went wrong. That morning, as she mopped the marble floor of the main corridor, she had no idea that each step she took among those expensive rugs was leading her closer to the moment that would change her life forever. And perhaps, without realizing it, the soft melody she hummed was already unlocking a destiny no one in that hotel could have foreseen. That morning, the Royal Crest felt like a different place. Every corner gleamed, as if even the floor feared displeasing the owner. Mr. Harrison, in a gray suit and a strict expression, patrolled the corridors like a general inspecting his troops. "No mistakes today," he repeated, like a threatening mantra. The news was already circulating among the staff. An Arab sheik, a millionaire and business partner, would be staying at the hotel. And as always, any misstep would fall on the most invisible ones. Layla knew that. So she cleaned and checked every detail as if her life depended on it. It was 10:30 when the delegation arrived. Men in suits, translators, bodyguards, journalists, the entire hotel seemed to hold its breath. Harrison, desperate to impress, smiled exaggeratedly, gesturing like an actor in a cheap play. Layla watched from a distance, hiding behind a pillar, just to make sure she wouldn't get in the way. But fate, with its cruel sense of timing, loves to act at the most unfair moments. A single forgotten glass in the hallway, that was all it took. Just one simple glass, left behind by a guest, and Layla hadn't had the time to pick it up yet. Harrison saw it. And that tiny detail became the perfect spark to ignite his wounded pride. The sound of the glass rolling on the floor echoed like thunder in the tense silence. "Who left this here?" he roared, his face turning red. And when his eyes met Layla's, the verdict was given before she could say a word. She tried to step forward, cloth in hand, her voice trembling. "Sir, I just hadn't." But he didn't let her finish. "You. It's always you. I've said it 1,000 times. I want perfection. This is a luxury hotel, not a shelter." His words cut like blades, and the air seemed to disappear from the hallway. Some employees lowered their heads. Others pretended not to see. The humiliation spread quickly, like expensive perfume in a closed room. Layla felt her face burn, a mix of shame and helplessness rising inside. She wanted to disappear, to vanish, but her legs shook. "Please, sir, I can clean it right now," she tried, her voice barely a whisper. Harrison laughed, that cruel laugh of someone who knows they're winning. "Clean? You shouldn't even be here. You're a stain on the name of the Royal Crest." His words bounced off the marble, and for a moment, even the foreign guests turned to look. The sheik, wearing a light turban and a calm expression, watched silently. He didn't understand every word, but he understood the tone, and the tone was humiliation. One of his interpreters whispered something in his ear, and the sheik frowned, as if he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. Harrison, blinded by his own ego, kept talking, gesturing, trying to assert authority before his guest. And without realizing it, he was digging his own grave. Layla stepped back. The floor seemed to spin beneath her, her body light, her heart heavy. Years of dedication, and now, a forgotten glass had turned her into a public joke. A knot formed in her throat, but she stayed on her feet, not out of pride, but survival. Inside her, something stirred, an old strength, buried under years of silence. A memory of a time when her voice mattered. "Get out of here before I have you fired," Harrison shouted, pointing at her. And that was when the impossible happened. Layla, frightened, opened her mouth to apologize, but what came out wasn't English. They were soft, melodic words, in a language the hotel owner never imagined he'd hear from her. Fluent Arabic, so graceful, so respectful that even the sheik's eyes widened in surprise. The hallway froze. The interpreter stopped mid-sentence. Harrison blinked, confused, not understanding a single word. Layla, realizing the silence around her, tried to compose herself, but it was too late. What began as humiliation was already turning into something else. The Sheik's gaze had changed, and in that moment, the invisible woman became the center of everyone's attention. Without knowing it, Harrison had opened the door Layla had kept closed for years. The secret she carried in her heart, the language of her past, the key to a new destiny. And no one, not even the arrogant millionaire, was prepared for what came next. The sound of Arabic words filled the air like an unexpected melody, soft, elegant, full of grace. The Sheik tilted his head, surprised, and a small smile formed under his well-groomed beard. "Anta tatakalam al-Arabiya?" he asked, curious, almost in disbelief. And Layla, her hands still trembling, replied smoothly, "Naam, Sayyidi, atakalamyaha mundu kunta tifla." "Yes, sir. I've spoken it since I was a child." The silent audience looked on as if witnessing a miracle. Harrison, speechless, glanced between the Sheik and the cleaner, as if the world had just turned upside down. Suddenly, the tension turned into curiosity. The aggression dissolved into whispers. The Sheik slowly approached, intrigued, as if he'd found a gem in the dust. He began speaking faster, testing her fluency, her understanding, her accent. And Layla, calm, confident, followed every phrase effortlessly. The humiliation that once burned in her chest was now admiration in the eyes of everyone around her. The scene felt almost written by destiny itself. "How is that possible?" one of the guards muttered, while Harrison struggled to keep his composure. The Sheik turned to him and said in English, with a gentle but firm tone, "She speaks the language of my heart. That, Mr. Harrison, is respect." The words struck like a verdict. Layla lowered her eyes, shyly, but inside, something reignited, a spark of dignity, long dormant. After years, someone finally saw her. Within minutes, the woman who once cleaned the hallways became the spontaneous interpreter of a billionaire. Harrison, stunned, tried to hide his embarrassment behind a nervous smile. "Ah, yes, our staff is very diverse," he stammered, as the delegation exchanged astonished looks. But it was too late, the spotlight had shifted. The Sheik, now fully at ease, spoke with Layla as if they were old acquaintances. And she, polite and composed, translated for everyone, smoothing over the tension that had filled the room moments before. Some employees watched from afar, mouths open. "She really speaks Arabic," whispered one. "Fluently," answered another. Shock mixed with silent pride. After all, she was one of them, invisible just yesterday, now standing before everyone. The golden corridor, once the stage of humiliation, had become the setting for a lesson no one would forget. Layla's secret, guarded for so many years, had finally surfaced, with grace and power. Impressed, the Sheik asked about her story. Layla, still trembling slightly, explained. She'd grown up in the Middle East, daughter of American missionaries, studied in local schools, learned the language in the streets, the mosques, the markets. "And now, you clean rooms in Miami?" he asked, visibly unsettled by the contrast. Layla smiled gently, without bitterness. "Life doesn't always speak the language of our dreams, sir." The interpreter translated, but her words hardly needed it, they were universal. The Sheik's tone softened, almost paternal. "The world needs more people like you, those who serve with humility but speak with wisdom." Harrison swallowed hard. It was clear the situation had slipped from his control. Layla was now leading the conversation, explaining cultural customs, clarifying etiquette, even suggesting adjustments the hotel owner himself didn't know. Without realizing it, she was saving the Royal Crest's reputation in front of a powerful investor. As the conversation unfolded, Harrison nervously tried to step in. "Layla, come here. Maybe it's best if you..." But the Sheik stopped him with a firm gesture. "Let her stay. I'd rather speak with her." That was the final blow to his pride. Harrison stepped back, pale, as the staff exchanged glances. The same woman he had just humiliated was now the bridge between him and the man he most wanted to impress. Life's irony couldn't have been sharper. Layla kept her composure. Inside, her heart was still racing, but something had changed in her eyes. It was as if the weight of shame had finally given way to the certainty of who she was. And when the Sheik ended that first meeting, shaking her hand and saying, "Shukran, Layla," the entire hallway seemed to breathe with her. No one dared to laugh or whisper. For the first time, the silence was one of respect. As the group walked away, Harrison stood frozen, staring at her, unsure what to say. Layla simply adjusted her uniform and went back to pushing her cart. But now, each step sounded different. The sound of someone carrying a secret the world had finally begun to uncover. And what would come in the following days would make the hotel owner himself rethink the meaning of the word power. The next morning, the royal crest woke up changed. The buzz in the halls no longer came from Harrison's orders but from whispers about the cleaner who spoke Arabic. Layla entered quietly, as always, but now eyes followed her wherever she went, some filled with amazement, others with hidden envy. Mrs. Collins, the manager who used to pretend not to see her, greeted her with a nervous smile, the kind you give someone who suddenly might matter. Layla answered politely, but without lowering her head. She knew late respect is rarely sincere, but still, it felt good to be seen. While she was collecting towels on the executive floor, a staff member from the office rushed in, breathless. "Layla, Mr. Harrison wants to see you. Right now." Her heart raced. She thought it might be the end, a firing disguised as a compliment. But when she entered the glass-walled office, she found the Sheik sitting beside the owner, smiling over a cup of coffee. "Ah, my friend with the golden tongue," he said in his accented English. Layla bowed her head slightly, unsure what that meant. "I want you to accompany me during my stay. I don't trust interpreters who can't look people in the eye." Harrison swallowed hard. That line cut deeper than any reprimand. He tried to interfere, mentioning hotel protocol, but the Sheik interrupted him again. "Either her, or I find another hotel." And that polite threat was all it took for Harrison's pride to melt into immediate obedience. Layla was speechless, her heart torn between fear and gratitude. She humbly accepted the offer, and without knowing it, took the first step toward a transformation that would change her life forever. The following days felt like a dream. Layla, now dressed in a simple white suit, accompanied the Sheik to meetings, dinners, and cultural events. She translated every word with grace and calm, mediating complex negotiations as if she'd done it all her life. The man who had humiliated her could barely hide his discomfort. When he passed her in the lobby, he avoided eye contact. Maybe out of shame, maybe out of fear of seeing his own reflection in the greatness he had ignored. During a private lunch, the Sheik asked more about her story. Layla spoke honestly, without self-pity. She told him she was the daughter of American missionaries who had lived in Lebanon, that she'd learned 5 languages while still young and once dreamed of becoming a teacher. But the war had taken her home, her books, and her father. When she came to the United States, she discovered that foreign diplomas meant nothing. She started cleaning rooms because she needed to eat, and she stayed. "Sometimes life pushes you down," she said softly, "just to see if you'll learn to fly differently." The Sheik listened quietly, deeply moved. "You carry more wisdom than many men who sit on thrones," he said. At that moment, Layla realized that, for the first time in years, someone saw her beyond the uniform. And that realization hurt and healed, all at once. Beside him, she was rediscovering not just her voice, but her identity. The brilliant-minded woman time had tried to erase was breathing again. Meanwhile, inside the hotel, things were changing. Harrison was tense, constantly trying to impress the visitor, but every time he spoke, the Sheik turned to Layla. "What does she think about this?" he'd ask. And Layla, always polite, gave her opinion. With every answer, the executives witnessed something Harrison couldn't bear to admit: intelligence. And intelligence, when it comes from someone once humiliated, shines with a light that can't be dimmed. Then came the gala dinner, the moment of redemption. The ballroom was filled with businessmen, politicians, and investors. Harrison gave a long speech, desperately trying to regain control of the narrative. But the Sheik interrupted him, asking Layla to sit by his side. A murmur rippled through the room. Cameras turned toward her. The same blue uniform had been replaced by a simple, elegant white dress, borrowed at the last minute by a moved co-worker. Layla took a deep breath, looked at the golden lights, and thought about everything she had lived through to reach that moment. During dinner, the Sheik made a point to praise her publicly. "The Royal Crest is a fine hotel," he said, "but its greatest treasure isn't in its walls, it's among the people who work within them." His eyes turned to Layla. Harrison forced a smile, swallowing each word like a bitter pill. The silence in the hall turned into applause. Layla, for a moment, didn't know what to do. She simply smiled, humbly, and whispered in Arabic, "Alhamdulillah, praise be to God." That night, as the ballroom emptied and the lights dimmed, Harrison watched her from afar, with the bitter expression of a man who had learned his lesson too late. Layla adjusted her badge, now temporarily replaced with a golden one reading official interpreter, and walked through the marble corridor with steady steps. There was dignity in her stride. And without knowing it, fate still held one more surprise, one that would bring the entire Royal Crest to its knees. That week, the Royal Crest felt like it was living a dream, though not for Harrison. Since the gala, the owner had been restless, pressured by the media and curious investors asking about the maid who became the Sheik's interpreter. The corridors, once filled with arrogance, now carried a quiet sense of respect. Layla walked among them with the same simplicity as before, but with something new in her eyes: peace. She no longer needed to hide. Her voice, once drowned out by routine, now echoed through the hotel as a silent reminder that true worth is never lost, it simply waits for the right moment to be seen. The Sheik, captivated by her story, extended his stay in Miami for a few more days. It became common to see them talking by the pool, exchanging ideas about culture and education. One afternoon he asked, "If you could change one thing here, what would it be?" Layla thought for a moment and answered, "People think humility is weakness. It's not. It's strength that has learned self-control." The billionaire smiled, impressed. "You're a teacher, not an employee." She simply laughed. "Just a student of life, sir." At the hotel's main office, a letter arrived sealed with a golden crest. It was from the Sheik himself. Harrison opened the envelope with trembling hands. The document, written in both English and Arabic, was a formal recommendation to the International Board of Partner Hotels. Its content was clear. Layla Anderson was to be promoted to International Guest Relations Coordinator, with a salary 20 times higher and an invitation to represent the Royal Crest at events in the Middle East. Harrison read and reread it in disbelief. The man who had humiliated her was now forced to announce her as the new face of his empire. The news spread quickly. Employees, guests, and even journalists gathered to witness the announcement. The lobby was packed. Harrison stepped onto the makeshift stage, microphone in hand, struggling to mask his shame. His voice cracked twice before he managed to say her name. "Layla Anderson will, from this day on, be our international coordinator." The crowd erupted in applause. The Sheik, standing nearby, smiled discreetly. Layla climbed the steps slowly, with the calm confidence of someone who carries both the weight and lightness of her own story. As she walked, flashes of memory returned, the days of humiliation, the long nights cleaning rooms, the Arabic songs she'd whispered just to remember who she was. Each step felt like an answer to the past. When she reached the top of the stairs, the room fell silent. Layla turned to face the audience, her eyes steady and serene. The once invisible woman now stood at the center of the light. She took the microphone. Harrison expected a short speech, maybe a shy thank you. But Layla just smiled. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, time stopped. "Respect," she said calmly, "is the first language everyone should learn." The words, spoken without anger, cut through the air like an arrow. The room rose to its feet in applause. Harrison lowered his head. And there, without shouting, Layla defeated him with the most powerful weapon of all, dignity. After the ceremony, she returned to the room she once cleaned. She sat on the perfectly made bed and took a deep breath. Outside, the city buzzed as always, but inside her, there was a sweet, peaceful silence. She picked up her old notebook, the one she had kept since her years in the Middle East, and wrote a single sentence. Every humiliation carries, in secret, the seed of transformation. She closed the notebook and smiled. In the days that followed, the Sheik departed, leaving behind a handwritten note. The rarest jewels are never found in showcases, but in souls that cannot be corrupted. Layla tucked the note between the pages of her notebook, a symbol of the lesson she had learned and taught. She began training new employees, translating protocols, and representing the royal crest at international conferences. And every time she spoke in public, she remembered the girl who once was invisible. Now, the whole world listened. Over time, the royal crest displayed a new plaque in its grand lobby. It read, "Respect is the universal language." No one knew who had written it, but everyone knew who it was about. And so, the story of the maid who moved a sheik's heart became an inspiration to hundreds. A reminder that sometimes, what seems like the end is only the first chapter of an eternal lesson. And to you who heard this story until the end, remember, the value the world ignores, God exalts at the right time. If this story touched your heart, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're watching from. Your presence is what gives meaning to stories like this one.